Thank you so much, Mirjam, for joining me today for this interview. I'm really excited to hear about your experience as an Atlassian solution partner consultant who designed and implemented risk management framework for our joint client, Cobham Satcom, a safety critical defense company in Denmark. I will ask you a few questions about your journey, the challenges that you faced along the way, and obviously I want to get your lessons that other Atlassian solution partners could take away from this interview, delivering compliance and risk management solutions in highly regulated industries. But let's dive right in. So when you joined Cobham Satcom, you were handed a rather complex compliance brief for space and defense company with a legacy of a really fractured tooling. Before Eficode, you managed really massive Atlassian accounts in Klarna and Zalando. These are completely different types of environments, I would imagine. When you look at them, the kind of the fast-moving tech environments of these accounts and compare them to the Cobham Satcom regulated defense environment, what are the biggest differences that you automatically realize that, oh my God, this is completely different type of work that I need to do here?
I think one of the biggest differences was also that when I was working for the other clients, like you mentioned, Zalando and Klarna, I was dedicated to this one customer 100% of the time. Whereas with Cobham, I am working 8 hours a week. So I get less of the whole picture of what's going on, but I feel like I need to know more because it's such a regulated area. So it was more challenging. And obviously, Klarna being a bank is also very sensitive, very regulated. It was very important to do things right, but I had a whole team behind me that was doing I don't want to say the heavy lifting, but they were doing the heavy lifting. And I was helping. I felt like I was helping out more. Whereas here, this was a project that I was put on by myself. So while I still have a very nice team behind me, I can ask all my colleagues within Eficode as well. I had some people from Jira also helping me. But the biggest difference for me was that this was on me to figure it out, and with very limited time. And like you say, very regulated, very fast moving, and you need to get it right. There's not much of a playing room of, oops, the audit didn't go well.
Let's say that a new consultant will come to Eficode and is thrown into this kind of really highly regulated space, or any other Jira consultant, let's say, I would ask you, what should I do? It's a really regulated environment. What would be the one thing that you would tell them that's different from a normal tech environment?
I always tell them, first of all, to breathe. Nothing is going to explode. I think that was what I missed when I got onto this project, was that it is okay. You can take your time and you're allowed to ask as many questions as you need. I think that's always important, not just within these kind of environments, but in general. When you're put on a new project as a consultant, you're going to have to ask questions. You're not expected to have all the answers. You have a team. I have my Eficode team behind me. I have lots of colleagues that have worked here for years that have lots and lots of experience within Atlassian, within other areas as well. And like I said, I also had someone specifically from a GRC team that was helping me out, because honestly, when I was having meetings, I sometimes didn't understand everything. I don't really know the terminology that is being used in this specific area. So I had a translator with me who was like, oh, this is what that means in normal people words. So I think it's important, if you're starting this as a consultant, whether you've done this for forever or just new to this specific type of project, or whether you're a new consultant, just ask people. You're not expected to know everything. And I did that as well. You need to get it right. You need to know that what you're working towards is actually, you understand why you're doing it. And you need to also be able to, of course, give suggestions as a consultant as to how you can do this better, because there's always the customer having the idea of what needs to be the outcome of it. What does it need to look like at the end? And you as a consultant need to be able to say, okay, we're working towards that, but let's break it down into smaller bits and let's work on those as a puzzle to get the bigger picture.
I love the way you say that. When you don't know, just ask others, because I think regulated industries particularly love these acronyms, right? They just throw them in everywhere. Yes. And you're like, what? What is this? And a lot of times it's just the acronym is a new one and the framework might be a little bit different from another industry, but exactly. There is nothing completely new.
Yeah, and also in this context, I remember in a lot of meetings we're creating fields like drop downs with several options. And it would be like option A, option B, option C, etc. It's like, I don't know the etc. because I'm not into this type of world. So I would need to be the annoying person and say, hey, can you please clarify what etc. is. Again, if I don't get the answer from the customer themselves, because maybe it was just a document that is written, I can still ask also the people within my own company that are great at helping with this as well. So it is important to ask questions.
The follow-up question to that is actually the fact that when you are presented this kind of really challenging problem, as engineers, we always feel like, okay, let's start building something. But in regulated industries, as you said yourself as well, that there are frameworks. And then, of course, there's a lot of process mapping and understanding the process, the inputs and outputs. How much did that kind of, not diving straight into building a solution, but first understand the process and understand where it fits in the bigger picture in Cobham? How did that help you in providing the solution in the end?
As you say, us engineers, we just want to build. We just want to have something standing and we just want to show it. I don't want to say it doesn't come naturally, because I am someone who does like to dive into the details and like to understand the impact of what I'm doing also on the bigger picture. So for me, it was quite nice to just be able to get good requirements, to have a good understanding of, hey, if we do this, also in a sense of, if we're doing this right now, are we going to be able to build something on top of it? Are we going to be able to expand into something else? Are we going to be able to get something like a risk register to work together with other projects, which is going to be important? So we don't want to have something existing in a silo. We want it to be able to communicate with other spaces within Jira as well. So for me, it was not as annoying as some people might find it.
But let's look into what you did. So you built an automated vendor assessment using JSM portals. You had conditional forms, custom scoring logic, and all of that had to map with the frameworks that they were using, guide ISO and NIST standards. Can you tell us how you did that and how our Risk Manager Plus could handle that task for you?
This is quite a new thing that we have created. So we started with the risk management before, and then we went on to the vendor assessment. JSM is really good for this because you can automate a lot. And what we have done is that when someone in the company decides they want to onboard a vendor, they will send what's called a vendor request, which is just an internal ticket. And that will automatically send out an email with the vendor questionnaire to the vendor. Then they will have 3 parts that they need to fill out. There are quite a lot of questions. It's very thorough.
And we have all seen those really long questionnaires.
Exactly. Which was also the reason we have decided to divide it, because instead of sending one really long questionnaire to one person, we said, okay, there's one for legal, there was one for finance, and there was another one. But we've divided it into 3. And that means that within the vendor company, they can also just say, okay, there's one person that is more responsible for this part of it and one for the other parts. And also within Cobham, we have different people that need to have a look at it afterwards, right? As soon as the questionnaires are submitted, depending on what type it is, it will create a ticket to someone internally within Cobham. And then they will have a score. So there's automatic scoring done, which is currently a little bit chunky. Maybe we can get back to that later as well, because I tried to base it on the more natural way of talking to Rovo, our internal AI. But at the moment, that wasn't good enough when I built it. We have to say, okay, if it's answer A, it needs to have this score. If it's answer B, it needs to have this score, etc. Then it will sum all of that and you will get a score that you can compare to the levels that Cobham has set internally. So anything over a certain amount is going to be high risk, anything under a certain amount is going to be low risk, or the other way around. It depends a little bit on how the customer wants it, right? This is what we've built so far. I think we want to implement some more automations between the vendor questionnaire and different parts of the business as well. And the same with the risk register. Maybe if something is put in as a risk, we want to send out some automatic notifications at some stage. Hey, have a look at this again. Did anything change? So that's it at the moment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that SoftComply Risk Manager Plus was used for information security risk management in Cobham. Would you say that would have helped you along the way faster if you were using that also for vendor risk assessment?
I think just in general, it helps a lot if you don't have to do all of the work yourself within Jira, because I love the platform. There's a reason that I have moved from Google into working with Atlassian. I'm very grateful to the people that have taught me everything that I know about it, but I'm equally grateful, or even more so, to people that develop apps like you guys do, where you can actually just outsource a little bit of the headache that something like this is. I don't want to make it sound any nicer than it is, because it is difficult. So it is really nice to have an app that can just help you set it up much faster, regardless of where you come in. That's, of course, another advantage of using a vendor with an app. It's not just easier for me, but it's also the things that I don't understand, I can actually ask it and I get good answers. So it has helped a lot. I can really recommend that for this type of thing, definitely, because I don't think we would be having this conversation if we did not use your app. We would have the conversation maybe in a few years, but it has definitely made everything a lot faster.
Thank you. It is a bit of a contradiction in the sense that as engineers, we want to build, but then at the same time, there are tools out there that already have done it. So we don't always need to invent the wheel. We can use and customize the apps instead. But tell me how hard it is as a consultant to find the right app in the first place, because the marketplace has thousands of apps. How do you start testing which one of the apps is the exact right one for the situation or task that you need to solve? And then instead of implementing or developing your own solution, you just customize the app that fits the situation.
Yeah, I just also want to get back to what you said. We as engineers, of course, want to build things, really do, but we do not want to rebuild things that already exist, because you can ask anyone working within the Atlassian environment. It's a wonderful tool, but it is in many cases quite basic. So you cannot natively do many things that you would want to do, or that you would need to do in this kind of situation as well, for it to be safe and for it to be accurate. Like you say, there's a lot out there. I personally just look at ratings, and not just on the marketplace. I look outside of the marketplace a little bit as well. I see that you guys, for example, have really good documentation as well. Super important, because I don't want to end up with an app where then I still need to do all the research or even dive into how things work under the hood. That defeats the purpose of me getting an app, right? So I'm always doing a little bit of research, what has good ratings in the marketplace. And obviously not just for this, but for anything, because we look a lot into apps that kind of go into our mental storage, to say, for customers that are like, oh, I can't do this with Jira, how would you recommend? We have this little list of things that we recommend as consultants, kind of by default. So obviously we also don't want to go every single time someone says, oh, I need to do risk management. I'm like, okay, let me go do all the Googling again. No, of course, because we've used one that is good. So we recommend that one. If I am allowed to bring this up, in the age of AI, I am even more strict with what I am trying out, because there's a lot out there that I think it has not been developed by a person, has maybe not been quality checked by a person. So for me, all the more important that when I'm looking at an app like yours, I see, okay, you have good documentation, you have videos that are showing things, there is actual people involved. That would put it a little bit higher up on my list as well. There's nothing wrong with AI. I think it should be implemented as much as you can within the constraints that you should have, it should stay. But it becomes, for us as consultants, also difficult to go check which of the new apps are actually developed by a person. We can't see the source code, right? We just need to assume that whatever's out there is safe. So
you touched on a good topic, because no interview today is complete without AI. So let's dive into that one. You mentioned when we talked last time that you knowingly didn't use AI in the project with Cobham. Can you elaborate a little bit? Why did you not want to do that?
I just want to clarify, it's not that I don't want to do it. I think it should be used as much as possible. I think it is very useful in, especially in the Atlassian world, you have Rovo, and Rovo deals with natural language. You don't need to be coding. You can actually just say, hey, we have this vendor questionnaire. We have these legal questions. Answers A, B, and C need to get a score of 5. Answers D, E, F need to get a score of 3, whatever. You can write it down like that, and Rovo should give you the sum of those answers. It does not. So unfortunately, when I was trying it out, I had set up a nice agent and it was working well. And then when we came to the point where I was asking it, can you give me the score for the questions that are filled out right now? So I'm telling it, these are the questions that the answers need to get this amount of points. If someone doesn't answer at all, it also gets the highest points so that it goes into a higher risk bracket, etc. And then I would get an answer of 37. Just a wild number here. I don't know how accurate that number actually was, but it was not correct. I'm like, okay, let me just puzzle around with it a little bit more. Long story short, I have tried it 7 times, and every time it gave me a different number. and in a risk management process, that is not good at all. So while I have nothing necessarily against AI, I am very skeptical of it, because if you are not checking the output, or if you don't know what the output should be, you could, for the first time it puts something out, yeah, 37, okay, sounds about right. You might end up with a vendor that is actually a really high risk, that Rovo will just tell you, like, no, that's fine. I don't want to say that Rovo is not good. It just wasn't doing well in this specific situation. So I decided not to use it, and I decided to go the kind of hard route with that. Because in the end, especially because we're talking about risk management, I don't want to let this create some kind of hallucinations that are going to cause problems later down the line. That being said, there is a lot that it can do, and it can edit tickets as well. So once this gets a bit better, it's a matter of time as well. I think AI is always growing and always improving. So once this gets a little bit better, I will be happy to get rid of the logic that I have right now and replace it with an agent that can literally just, when a ticket is created or when a form is submitted, calculate that in half a second, give the number, and that's it. And when you can expand that a little bit into Rovo being an agent, so you're able to talk to it as well, it can also give you an overview, not just this is a number, because that's what we currently get. But once AI gets better, which I'm sure it will, it is going to be able to say to you, okay, the score is 37. The vendor scored low on these legal questions, so you might want to check that again in a few months. I think AI in the future, hopefully, is going to be able to actually give you the insights as well. You'd still want some people behind it to double check it, but you'd have a lot less of this kind of busy work of going through these really long questionnaires and seeing what is right and what is not.
Absolutely. Like you said, first, it needs to be reliable. Otherwise, especially when we're talking about safety critical space and defense, there is very little room of getting unreliable information from AI.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But you mentioned different departments. I wanted to come back to Cobham Satcom's CISO, Lemuel Valdez, who shared in another interview with us lately that his ultimate vision is that every department in Cobham is running their own risk register, and then everything is fed into the central system. Risk management and compliance is not a very sexy and very fun topic for most people, except for me, of course. What has been the challenge in teaching non-technical people, let's say HR or operations, about risk management and keeping data clean for security?
This is a nice challenge for me in general, because I'm also a fitness trainer in my free time. No one likes when you tell them to do squats. It's about how you ask them to do it. Put some nice music on. I don't particularly like telling people what to do, but I like explaining to them why they should do it. Let's take a different example. Don't look at this, oh, I need to fill out all these things and be compliant. But what if you were on the other side? What if it was your data that gets put into a system? Would you want the company to have all of this data about you for the rest of all eternity, for example? No? Okay, so that's why we're doing this. I always try to just find some different examples, different people, different approaches. You might need to have some other examples, or sometimes you just need to bring some cases where it went wrong for companies, for people to understand, oh, it does actually have an effect if I do not follow it. Because it seems for many people, yeah, but risk is something that legal deals with. Why is it my responsibility, right? I'm just one of the many people that work for this company. Why do I need to concern myself with something that is their responsibility? And they can never really say who they is. So it's just important also to give these examples of what happens if it goes wrong.
I love it how you relate it to that person as well. What if another company has your data?
Exactly. What if there's a hack and suddenly all your email addresses and passwords are out there because the company stored them in plain text? And you're like, that could have been done better.
For sure.
We used to have police officers and firemen in school just before New Year's Eve. And you would get the most horrifying pictures of this is what happens if you mess with fireworks. Some people just need that. This is what happens if you don't actually treat data properly. This is what happens if you don't take risk and security management properly. Don't want to scare them into anything, but do make them see the bigger picture. Do make them understand that you're part of it as well, that you can't just say like it is them, whoever them is, that needs to take responsibility for that. It all starts from the bottom and everyone has their part in it.
And today, almost everybody is regulated. There is GDPR, there is NIS2, there is DORA. In almost every industry, you have regulations that you need to adhere to. But in terms of what you would suggest other Jira admins or consultants out there who are used to building their own solutions, automations with native Jira capabilities or custom scripts, where would you recommend these people to look at SoftComply Risk Manager Plus or apps that already can help with compliance and regulations?
Just like we said at some stage earlier today, don't try to reinvent the wheel. It's of course really cool to be able to say, oh, look, I did this, but the average consultant, the average Jira admin especially, does not have the finer understanding of the bigger picture to be able to implement something properly. So you might be implementing something that looks from the outside that it is working, but it is missing all these things that you just said as a compliance geek, all these regulations that you do need to adhere to as a company, because this is also, we kind of come back to what we just said. Even this one Jira admin is part of a bigger picture, part of responsibility for data safety, for adhering to these regulations. I understand the want of building something and saying, I've done this, but the implications of what can go wrong, I think, are just not worth the amount of work that goes into versus just using a vendor, using an app that exists, that has people that are knowledgeable about this specific topic, that integrates seamlessly with Jira. For me, it is not even a question, because if I had, I think we said it at the start, if I had to do this by myself, I would not be finished. I'd be very far from finished by now. And I think I would still not be fully understanding the whole picture of how things link together. I still need to understand, of course, what I'm doing, but there's a little bit of, I know that you've done your work. I know that your app is safe. So I don't need to worry about these extra parts.
Today, I think a lot of solution partners are finding themselves in a position that they need to be actually business process consultants. It's a hard change, of course, because the consultants need to go from selling licenses into actual consultant work. You did that in Cobham. You have that experience. What would you suggest to other solution partner consultants? Where to begin, how to learn to do that? What would they need to know before they jump into a case where they need to do process management?
Myself, I'm relatively new as a consultant anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm the right person to be giving advice here. But I think like you said, it is something that has been changing. And I think this is the way that it is going to be going forward, that you're going to be the one-stop shop for your customer. Just off the top of my head, an example of one of my customers right now. Hey, I don't know what to do with my users because we have this amount of licenses, which is also bought through Eficode. That's fine, but not my responsibility. And I want to optimize how we are using our licenses. And then they'll go, oh, by the way, we also have this one space that is using some kind of integration with some kind of software. Can you fix that? So the main thing there is that you're going to be the one that they're going to ask all the questions to, but you're not going to be the one who needs to answer all the questions. So I think that's important. Also, coming back to what we said before, you need to be able and be okay with asking questions. You're not expected to know everything. And even if you're working as a freelance consultant, but unless you're working really by yourself in your own little bubble and you never talk to anyone else, you're never doing it alone. So you always have people that you can fall back on. I have a lot of very knowledgeable people in Eficode that I can talk to. I have the app vendors that I can talk to. There's always someone who can help you. You're not expected to do everything yourself. So I think if this is something for consultants that are newly moving into this, either as a new consultant or moving from a more license management into doing business consulting or doing this Atlassian architecture type thing, it's okay to not know everything. You're allowed to have gaps in your knowledge. I have seen this from the start because I'm not from a consulting background. I started doing this about a year ago. And from the start, I have seen it as a really nice opportunity to learn a lot of things in different customers, different companies, different people, different countries even, because obviously I'm working from Sweden, but not all my customers are Swedish. I'm working with some people from Denmark. I'm working with some people from the Netherlands, for example, have some Swedish customers as well. You work with so many different people and you learn so many different things every day. I think that's the approach that you should. There's no need to be the all-knowing one source of everything. There's always going to be things that you're more comfortable with. When I started with Eficode, my knowledge was I'm a Jira admin, so I know how to do these basic things like adding fields, changing workflows. And then it was like, oh, can you set up JSM for this customer that does not have JSM yet? And I was like, what? So yeah, you know what? The answer is yes, I can do it. I still managed to do it in the end. And it is because I have people that are supporting me with it, and I am making sure that I ask for feedback. But I think this is just a useful thing in all runs of life. It's not just consultant. It's okay not to know things. You don't need to, like our lovely ChatGPT does, have an answer to everything. You're allowed to say, I don't know.
And like you said, there are people who know, usually. Just go and ask.
Exactly.
Just ask around. I think that's
Yeah.
a really good answer to that question. But I also really like the fact that you need to be, as a person, also very inquisitive and ready to learn.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you won't be able to understand your client, especially in new settings that you haven't been before. But thank you so much, Mirjam. It was wonderful to chat with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time also to have this chat. It was very nice.